the inevitable question is going to come up here, and we brought you on to talk about the full length of the Sixers. So, just give us your overview on how you feel about the Ben Simmons situation. What do you expect going into this season? Just in general, how do you feel about it, and what do you expect to happen?
So, I think it's a mess, first and foremost. Like, obviously, a mess. I think it's like kind of uncharted territory in a sense because, yes, you see guys request trades all the time. It's a little different when it happens to the team that you're a fan of or the team that you cover professionally. But like the lasting memory of Ben Simmons is a low light for him in his career, right? And also, he's not universally considered like a top 10 player. The last couple guys that requested trades, like James Harden, is considered a top 10 player, top 5 player even. Jimmy Butler was considered like you could argue he was in the top 10 when he requested his trade, what have you. Ben Simmons is, you're kind of at the point where you're not sure if he's like a top 25 player. So the fact that you see him requesting a trade is like kind of odd. I wouldn't say it's at all surprising though, just because of like if you take stock in like what Ben seems to be as a person, where he's very deflective of responsibility for himself and he doesn't like accountability for himself. He loves talking about accountability, doesn't like actually being accountable for himself. The fact that he was actually finally like his feet were held to the fire by somebody in Doc and in Embiid. I wouldn't say the writing's on the wall, but I would say like I'm not surprised that he's throwing it seems like it's a very public fit about it. How do I think it's going to end? I think what'll ultimately happen is he will show up to camp. I know it's been reported like he's prepared to hold out, yada yada yada. The best way for him to get out of Philadelphia, if that's what he really wants, which I think it's more about him looking ahead of the situation and saying, I don't want to be somewhere I'm not wanted, and that's why I went out, as opposed to like, nah, I'm like super offended by this. Like I think it's part of it, but I don't think it's nearly what has been reported.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he'll realize that ultimately his best vehicle for moving on, if that's what he wants, is to show up and play and like restore his value a little bit. I think if it were a different organization figure, if it wasn't Daryl Morey, he probably would not, and he'd probably play the tactic that Rich Paul has threatened to this point. But I think Daryl is smart enough, and I think he's experienced enough to say, no. We recognize your value to us, even if we can't get out of the second round with you. We're going to hold you until we find the right offer. And I think his people, I think Ben's camp certainly knows that. They are hoping it wouldn't be the case, but I think they're pretty much aware of that at this point. And I just think that's the only way it's gonna end sooner rather than later. And I mean, that's the way I would operate too. I wouldn't give him up for pennies on the dollar. He's your last trade asset. So I mean, there's really, if once you trade him, if you don't capitalize on your return, your upside's limited.
Yeah, absolutely. And super tough situation overall, super messy, and I hate that it even got here. But you're absolutely right in that, like, if they mess up this trade and this whole process, really, it sinks the whole ceiling of this team, and all the championship hopes really die if this isn't handled right. And I am thankful that Daryl Morey is the guy handling those with kid gloves and giving the Sixers the best chance to win. But it's tough to look at the Sixers as coming out as a winner in this situation, and really for anyone to come out a winner. Like the winning in Ben Simmons' mind is simply playing in another uniform, but there's so much more to that on the Sixers end, and getting the right return for his talent, which is so up in the air how it's rated or looked at nowadays, which is also frustrating. And there certainly has been such a pendulum that swung to the point where now Simmons is not really regarded as well as his talent should deserve. And he's such a unique player because of his skill set, and which makes everything so difficult. So really, like you said about the rankings of player, it's so interesting to me to watch play out, just because he's not the type of like guaranteed talent that fits any team that we typically see. And like when there's a James Harden available, James Harden can make any team in the NBA better. And that's simply not the case with Ben Simmons because of the restrictions in his game. And he's still a fine player and a guy that we should get a lot of return for. And I'm sure that's what Morey's looking at it. And certainly has been the case from like the reported what they're asking for back, which is absolutely what he should be doing. But I don't know. I have a hard time believing that it's at a fixable state. I understand the best way to for him to get out of here is simply show up and play well. But I feel like in his little twisted mindset that it's past that point, and really I have no idea what's going to happen. It's such an interesting thing to watch play out.